At exactly 2:14 a.m. on a quiet weekday morning, the emergency line in a small American county lit up. No screaming, no gunshots, no panic, just silence. The dispatcher waited. 5 seconds, 10 seconds. Then the call disconnected. At first, it meant nothing. But within the next 6 weeks, that same house would call 911 more than 30 times. And here is the part that made hardened police officers uneasy. Most of the calls happened when no one was home. No phone was ever found. No device was ever located. No explanation was ever confirmed. This is not a ghost story. This is not an urban legend. This is a documented case recorded through emergency logs, police reports, and testimony from those who entered the house and never felt safe again. The house. The house stood on a calm suburban street, lined with trimmed lawns, parked sedans, and front porches that looked identical from a distance. 2 stories, white siding, a wooden staircase inside that creaked under pressure. Nothing about it looked dangerous. It was rented by a middle-class family, working parents, school-aged children, the kind of family no one ever notices. No criminal history, no domestic disputes, no prior emergency calls. Until the house dialed 911. The first response. When the first patrol car arrived, the officers followed protocol. Lights off, weapons holstered, front door knock. No answer. They checked the windows. No movement. Dispatch confirmed the call originated from inside the house. The officers entered. Room by room, they cleared the interior. Kitchen, living room, bedrooms. Everything was normal. No injured person, no phone off the hook, no landline on the walls. The house used only mobile phones. The call was logged as accidental/unknown. The officers left. If the story ended there, no one would remember it. But the house called again. The pattern begins. 3 days later, 1:48 a.m., another silent call. Same address, another patrol unit dispatched. This time, the family was asleep. The parents swore they never touched their phones. Their devices showed no outgoing calls. Police searched again. Nothing. But now the system showed something strange. The 911 call was not routed through a mobile carrier. It behaved like a landline call. But the house had no landline service, no active number, no account, no wires running to a central phone jack. Still, the dispatcher logs didn't lie. The call came from inside the structure. Escalation. Within 2 weeks, the calls increased. Sometimes silence, sometimes faint static, once breathing. Not heavy breathing, not panic breathing, just a slow, rhythmic sound, as if someone was standing still, holding the phone close to their mouth. Dispatchers began adding notes. Caller unresponsive, background noise unclear, open line terminated. Officers began to dread the address, because every time they entered the house, the feeling was the same. Not fear, wrongness. The empty house call. The moment everything changed came on a Tuesday afternoon, 12:31 p.m. The family was at work and school. The house was locked. The alarm system was armed. Yet 911 received another call. This time, the dispatcher heard something new. A faint clicking sound, like buttons being pressed. Police arrived within minutes. Doors locked, windows sealed. They forced entry. Alarm records confirmed. No motion detected. No human presence. Still, the call log showed a duration of 22 seconds. 22 seconds of a call that should not exist. The first theory. Police considered every rational explanation. Faulty wiring, alarm system glitch, neighbor interference, phone signal bounce. Telecom technicians were brought in. They found nothing. No hidden phone, no abandoned landline, no illegal connection. One technician reportedly said, "There's nothing here that can dial 911." Yet the calls continued. The psychological toll. The family stopped sleeping. Every night they waited for sirens, for knocks at the door, for police lights washing across their walls. The children refused to stay alone in rooms. The parents argued. Stress built. Neighbors whispered. Police cars became a regular sight. And then came the call that no one could explain away. The call with voices. At 3:09 a.m., dispatch received another call. This time, it wasn't silent. The dispatcher heard whispering, too low to understand, too human to dismiss. When asked, "911, what's your emergency?" the whispering stopped. The line stayed open, then disconnected. Officers arrived fast. They searched every inch. Nothing. But one officer noticed something. A single outlet in the hallway was warm to the touch. It wasn't plugged into anything. End of part 1, cliffhanger. From that night on, the house would no longer just call 911. It would begin responding, not with words, but with patterns. And when engineers finally decided to tear open the walls, they would find something that was never supposed to be there.
After the whispering call, the address was no longer treated as routine. It was flagged. Every 911 call that followed was marked priority response. Dispatchers were instructed to stay on the line longer. Officers were told to document everything. Because now the house wasn't just malfunctioning, it was behaving. The dispatch room. Emergency dispatchers are trained to remain calm. They hear screaming, gunfire, people dying. But this case disturbed them for a different reason. The calls came from the same address, same routing signature, same internal trace. Yet no two calls were exactly alike. Sometimes silence, sometimes static. Once, a dispatcher reported hearing what sounded like movement across a floor. Not footsteps, dragging, like something heavy being slowly pulled. The dispatcher logged it as unidentified background noise, possible interior movement. No one could explain how a sound from an empty house was traveling through a non-existent phone. Internal police concerns. By the 7th documented call, a supervisor requested a full case review. Police pulled call audio, dispatch logs, officer body cam footage, and telecom routing data. Nothing connected. No human error, no prank calls, no hacked system. The calls were real, and they were coming from inside the house, the surveillance decision. Law enforcement approved a temporary surveillance setup. Motion sensors were placed in hallways, living room, basement, and electrical panel area. Audio recorders were installed. No cameras inside bedrooms, but enough coverage to detect movement. The family was relocated for 2 nights. If the house called 911 again, they wanted proof. Night 1, 1:02 a.m. The house was empty. Sensors showed no motion, no sound. Then, the emergency line lit up again. Dispatch answered. The call lasted 11 seconds. Silent, disconnected. Officers checked the live feed. Nothing moved. No doors opened, no electrical spikes, no alarm triggers. Yet the system confirmed the call. The address was still calling for help. The audio review. When technicians reviewed the recorded audio, they noticed something disturbing. Under the static, there was a low-frequency sound, barely audible, slower than human breathing, too rhythmic to be random. No one could identify it, but everyone heard it. Officer testimony. One officer later described the house like this. It felt like someone was always just out of sight. Not hiding, another officer requested reassignment. Not because of fear, but because every time he entered the house, he felt disoriented. Clocks seemed off. Sounds echoed incorrectly, as if the space itself was wrong. The electrical anomaly. Electricians were called in. They found something strange, a voltage fluctuation that appeared briefly every time a 911 call was logged. It lasted less than 1 second, too short to power a device, but consistent, as if something was activating and shutting down instantly. They traced it to the walls near the staircase. There was no device there, just studs, insulation, and silence. The fourth night. At 3:17 a.m., the house called again. This time, dispatch heard something new. 3 short sounds, not words, not static. Knocks, slow, deliberate. 3 knocks, then silence. The dispatcher froze. She later reported her hands were shaking. Officers arrived. The house was sealed. No signs of forced entry. Inside, one motion sensor had recorded a spike. 0.6 seconds. Too brief to be human. The police meeting. That morning, a closed-door meeting was held. The phrase, unexplained technological phenomenon, was officially used in documentation. Another phrase appeared once, then was crossed out. Intelligent behavior. The family returned. They were allowed back into the house. They were not told everything, just that the issue was ongoing. That night, the parents slept with lights on. At 2:54 a.m., the father woke to a sound. Not a phone, not footsteps. A soft clicking noise, like buttons being pressed, coming from inside the walls. End of part 2. Cliffhanger. By the end of the second week, police stopped asking if the house would call again. They began asking when, and more importantly, who was answering on the other end, because the next call would not be silent. When technology fails to explain the present, investigators turn to the past, and the past of that house had been quietly buried. The record search. Police began where they always do: property records, renovation permits, ownership history. On paper, the house looked ordinary. Built in the late 1970s, one owner for nearly 20 years, then rented, then sold again. No fires, no murders, no public tragedies. But absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, because some things are never reported. The previous tenants. Detectives tracked down former renters. Most refused to talk. One agreed on the condition their name never be used. They lived in the house 10 years earlier. They described something unsettling. Sometimes at night, the phone would ring, but when we answered, no one was there. We didn't think much of it. They didn't have a landline anymore. They had removed it, yet they still heard ringing. They moved out after 6 months. No explanation given. The unlisted renovation. During the records review, a discrepancy appeared. There was evidence of a major interior renovation that never went through city permits. Drywall replaced, electrical rerouted, insulation removed and reinstalled. No contractor listed, no inspection record. It happened nearly 15 years ago, right after a former owner abruptly sold the house. The name that triggered alarms. That owner's name appeared in police systems once, not as a suspect, not as a victim, but as a person of interest, connected to a case that was never solved. A missing adult. A man in his early 40s, last seen alive inside the house. The disappearance. The missing man had lived alone. Neighbors described him as quiet, kept to himself, no family nearby. He vanished without warning. No struggle, no vehicle found.
The case went cold, but one detail resurfaced. The last known outgoing call from his phone was to 911. The call never connected. It was logged as incomplete. The coincidence. Investigators compared the timestamps. The missing man's incomplete 911 call originated from the same address, same routing signature, same unexplained behavior. The call was made years before the current family moved in. At the time, it was dismissed as a system error. Now, it didn't look like an error. It looked like a beginning.
The walls. Detectives requested permission to conduct a non-invasive scan of the house. Thermal imaging, electromagnetic field mapping. What they saw disturbed them. Inside one wall near the staircase, there was an irregular cavity, not part of the original blueprint. It was sealed, hidden, and slightly warmer than the surrounding structure. The town test. When audio equipment was placed near the wall, engineers detected something faint. Not a voice, not movement, a pulse, repeating, like an echo that never stopped. The theory no one wanted. Privately, officers discussed a theory they would never put in writing. What if the house wasn't malfunctioning? What if it was repeating, replaying something embedded in its structure? A call that never went through, a signal trapped in materials that were never meant to hold memory. The family learns the truth. The parents were finally told, partially. They were informed of the missing person, of the unlisted renovation, of the anomalies in the walls. The mother asked one question: "Do you think he's still here?" No one answered. At 2:11 a.m., the house called again. This time, dispatch heard something unmistakable, a voice, faint, broken, but human. 2 words, barely audible: "Help me." The line disconnected. Officers arrived. Inside the house, every motion sensor remained silent, but in the hallway near the staircase, the temperature dropped suddenly, 3 degrees in seconds. End of part 3, cliffhanger. Investigators now faced a terrifying question. If the house was calling 911, who was making the call, and why was it still trying?
After the voice was heard on the line, there was no debate left. The house was no longer treated as a malfunction. It was treated as a scene. The evacuation. Authorities made a decision they rarely make without physical danger. The family was removed immediately. Not relocated, evacuated. They were told to take essentials only: clothes, documents, nothing else. The house was sealed. Locks changed, windows secured, alarm system disabled, and replaced with law enforcement monitoring equipment. No one was allowed inside without authorization, because whatever was happening did not require people to be present anymore. The empty house. The first call after evacuation came fast, just 4 hours later, 11:43 p.m. Dispatch answered. This time, the call did not disconnect. It stayed open for 47 seconds. The dispatcher reported hearing something that sounded like slow movement, fabric brushing against a surface, a faint, strained exhale. No voice, no words, but the call remained active, as if someone was waiting. The response without entry. Officers were instructed not to enter immediately. They monitored from outside, body cameras rolling, thermal imaging active. Nothing moved. No heat signatures, no sound. Yet the call stayed open until dispatch terminated it. The call log listed, caller remained connected, no response, line ended by dispatcher. The house had never done that before. The engineers arrived. A specialized team was brought in. Telecommunications engineers, structural inspectors, forensic electricians. Their task was simple: find anything that could explain the calls. Hidden phones, illegal wiring, abandoned lines. They tore into the basement first. Nothing. They scanned the attic. Nothing. Then they turned to the wall near the staircase, the irregular cavity. The first opening. Drywall was cut carefully, studs exposed, insulation removed. The inside was narrow, too small for a person, too deliberate to be accidental. No phone, no device. But something was there. Old copper wiring, not connected to any active system. Cut. Dead. According to engineers, it should not have been capable of transmitting anything. Yet the moment the wall was opened, the house called 911 again.
The call during the cut. 1:26 p.m. Live on scene. Dispatch answered. This time, the audio was clear. Static. Then a sound that silenced the room. Crying. Low. Strained. As if coming from far away. The engineer holding the receiver froze. The call lasted 12 seconds. When it ended, every monitor in the house went dark for half a second, then came back online. The engineer's statement. One engineer later said, "It felt like the house reacted, like we touched something we weren't supposed to." He refused to return. The pattern emerged. Over the next 48 hours, the house called 911 repeatedly. Not randomly. Only when someone was present. Only when activity occurred. Movement triggered calls. Sound triggered calls. Silence did not. It was no longer broadcasting blindly. It was responding. The timing. Calls began aligning with a pattern. 2:11 a.m. 3:17 a.m. 1:26 p.m. The same times, over and over. Investigators checked historical records. Those timestamps matched something else. The missing man's last known activities. His final phone usage. His incomplete emergency call. The house wasn't calling for help. It was repeating a moment. The final test. Police conducted one last controlled experiment. An officer stood alone in the house. No movement. No sound. No equipment active. At exactly 3:17 a.m., the house called again. The dispatcher asked, "911, what's your emergency?" For the first time, the house answered. Not with a sentence, but with a single sound. A knock. One. Then silence. End of part 4. Cliffhanger. At that moment, the investigation stopped being about technology, because the house was no longer calling randomly. It was calling on schedule, and it was waiting for someone to answer. Once the pattern was confirmed, local authorities stepped back. This was no longer a municipal problem. It crossed into federal territory. Federal involvement. The FBI arrived quietly. No press, no announcements, unmarked vehicles. Their interest wasn't paranormal, it was procedural. Any unexplained communication routed through emergency systems triggered federal oversight, especially when it behaved with intelligence, especially when it responded. The classified review. Agents reviewed everything. 911 audio, electrical logs, engineering reports, historical call data. One agent made a note that would later be redacted from public files. Signal persistence without source. In simpler terms, the call existed even when the origin didn't. The full wall removal. Permission was granted to fully open the structure. Not a hole, not a scan.
The entire section of wall near the staircase was dismantled, studs removed, insulation stripped. What they found inside was not a device, it was a space, a narrow cavity lined with older construction materials, plaster, wood, materials no longer used. Embedded inside that cavity was something unexpected, a phone jack, disconnected, severed. According to city records, that jack should not have existed. It was never permitted, never installed legally, and it was connected to nothing. The unanswered question. If it wasn't connected, how was it calling? No one could answer. But when technicians touched the jack, the house called 911 again. The last controlled call. This time, agents prepared. Dispatch was alerted. Audio engineers stood by. The call came through, clearer than ever before. No static, no distortion, just a voice. Weak, male, broken by fear. "I didn't mean to." The line cut. No further audio. Dispatch logs recorded the call duration, 9 seconds. The agent's reaction. One agent reportedly stepped outside afterwards. He removed his gloves, sat on the curb, and said nothing for several minutes. When asked later why, he responded with a single sentence: "That wasn't a recording." The final incident. At 3:17 a.m., the house called again. No one was touching anything, no equipment active, no personnel inside. Dispatch answered, and this time the voice finished the sentence: "I didn't mean to die here." The line stayed open. Breathing was audible. Then a sound like movement, a scrape, followed by a final word: "Please." The line disconnected permanently. The silence. After that call, the house never dialed 911 again. Not once, not ever. Electrical readings stabilized, no anomalies, no fluctuations. The signal was gone, as if something had completed its task. The file closure. The case was closed under a classification that rarely sees daylight. No public explanation, no official cause. The house was declared unsafe, condemned, boarded, eventually demolished. The debris was removed, nothing recovered. No remains, no device, no answers. End of part 5, cliffhanger. But the emergency system remembers everything, and years later, a dispatcher in another county would hear something familiar, a silent call from an address that didn't exist.